Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mind Scrambler podcast. I'm your host, Spike Spencer, as always, and I brought you an amazing guest. I want you to say hello to Kristen Nedopak, and I'm going to let her tell you all of the crazy things, amazing stuff she's got going on, because it's a lot, guys. It is a lot, so strap in and listen. There's going to be a lot of good stuff here. Kristen, go.
Well, first of all, it's Nedopak. I have to say
Damn
that.
it, I didn't ask you that. Is it Nedopak, Nedopak?
It's like 50-50.
I would do it kind of in the middle.
It's 50-50. I always tell people, I'm like, think of Ned Stark, and that's me. Didn't die, though. Didn't die. I'm still alive, obviously, because I'm here. So, yes, hello, everyone. I heard through the grapevine that there's a bunch of nerds watching the show. So, just to let you know, I'm a huge fellow nerd. In my former life, I'll say, in the world of entertainment, I created the Skyrim parodies on my YouTube channel that went viral. So, a lot of my fans are from the video game world because I worked on that. After that, I created an award show called the Geekie Awards that gave genre artists and independent entertainment in like games and podcasts such as this awards. We had Stan Lee there. We had Kevin Smith there. We gave them awards as well for being pioneers. And I'm currently writing my first fantasy book in a very big series called Era Song, and it's about Ireland and magic and the healing power of love. So I've just got so many things going on at once, right? So like we all do.
Absolutely. Well, now here's you had said you won something at Cannes Film Festival with Era Song, right?
Well, it's not at a film festival. Initially, Era Song, the book series, was written as a film. In 2016, I went to Ireland and I had this idea, and I was actually still doing the Geekie Awards at that time. And I was like, I think this is the next thing that I need to do. And I wrote the whole film, and it was garbage. I got to 120 pages. It was like the absolute max. And I'm like, there's no way I could tell this story in 120 pages. Then I decided, I think it needs to be a TV show. So I wrote a pilot. I worked on that for months. And the pilot won, I don't know, like 30 different awards. I submitted the pilot to a whole bunch of writing festivals, and I got a finalist for Best Television Pilot at Cannes, which was awesome, and a whole bunch of other places it won or it got in finalist position. But when I was pitching the television series, I realized that I was not a showrunner. And in order for me to sell the story, I would have had to given the story up to a whole bunch of men who wanted to change it. And this is my story about my spiritual awakening and the rise of the divine feminine and magic. And so I took the reins back and I chose to make it into a book series so that I could control the story and tell it in the way that it was meant to be told. And so that's the transition of Era Song. And the book hasn't won any awards yet because I'm still working on it.
I'm familiar with that process. Oh.
I know it took me like a few months to write 6 episodes that were great. And now I'm writing a book and I'm like, wow, this takes so much longer because, right. You can't, for those of you that are film junkies, when you're writing a book, you have to create the entire world yourself. You have to do all the research. When you're writing a TV series, you just write a few action lines and create great characters. And then you have a whole production team that goes in and builds out costumes and the way everything looks. But when you're writing a book series, you have to do all of that yourself. So it's a historical fiction. It takes place during the famine in Ireland, which was such a big period of history for the Irish. And so I really just want to get that right and get that tone of what was happening there. So it's been a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any part, I'm going to geek out on Ireland with you for a second.
Of course.
I've been there 3 times and I've driven all over it, which is harrowing at best. It's like you really, Kim said this, she's like, you really want to test a relationship, drive in Ireland at night in the rain.
Oh, hi.
Stick shift.
My friend and I went there and I refused to drive. So I told her I would pay for the rental car if she drove. Not only did we drive around Ireland at night in the rain, we drove the Ring of Kerry at night. We started at sunset. We're like, we're going to do this. We're okay. We're protected by the ferries. We drove for hours in the very southern part of Ireland at night. And it was incredibly creepy. I think we hit a bunny. I think we ran into the wall. By the way, if you go to Ireland and rent a car, you have to get the full insurance because we replaced 2 cars on that trip and did not pay for anything.
Yep.
And they're so used to it. They're like, yeah, you're just going to hit something. Don't worry about it. The roads are narrow and they've got those stone walls. So I feel you on that. And at the end, my friend and I were like at each other's throats for a hot minute there trying to get back to the airport.
Yep. I have driven into a fine bank of Irish soil at about 30 miles per hour. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
And $600, $700 later, you're like, oh man.
Oh no, you didn't get the insurance?
I should have got the insurance. I'm a cheap bastard.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, no, next time, people, this is your lesson learned. You pay for zero.
Yeah.
We showed up and there was a giant scrape down the side and we just got out of the car and gave them the keys and left. I'm not condoning ruining cars, by the way, in Ireland. No. I'm just saying they recommend it for a reason.
Yes. That is, people don't get it when you're like, your mirror on the other side of your car is that far from a wall
of stone.
And you're doing 40, 50 miles an hour. You're like, the person sitting there is like, oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus.
Yeah.
They're not religious. Well, they're gonna be after that.
Exactly.
Now, whereabouts in Ireland does Erisong go all over? Is there anyone in particular?
Yes, so it takes place in Cork, near Cork, I would say, in about the Skibbereen area. The Bantry House, if anyone's ever been to Ireland, the Bantry House is in the south. That was the place that was the worst hit by the blight, and most of the people that perished were from the south. The south and the southwest were hit the most. So I've got the whole series taking place down there, although we do have characters that go back and forth to Dublin because there's a whole part there about, I don't really want to spoil it because that comes into play into book 3, but there's a lot of things that are happening there with a rebellion and people trying, men in politics and Irish politics trying to stand up to the English, because the story it's not really about the famine. It's more about the English politics and how they abandoned the Irish. And so there's a big feud in the story with the English versus the Irish and the military population that they had there. And so most of it takes place in the South, though.
Right. I was just curious because there's so many different areas. I mean, Ireland's pretty small, but it's quite diverse. And I mean, it is green. We'll give them that. But it's just a different, if you know the topography and you just kind of get a feel for how absolutely stunningly gorgeous it is. At the same time, during that time, it's stunningly barren. It's an interesting place.
Not only barren, but not to go dark here, but I mean, there aren't many accounts of the famine from people visiting because it was such a destitute. We look at like Skid Row, we look at poor places in our country, had nothing on Ireland. I mean, you would walk down the road. They have accounts from priests that would walk down the road and there would just be hundreds of dead people just on the road, starved to death, dead. And they'd go into houses just packed with dead people. I mean, there was so much traumatic death that it was pretty crazy. And for those people to leave the country, they had to walk by foot across Ireland to get to a ship and try to find some passage out of there. It was pretty intense. Meanwhile, of course, the English were by military force removing all the food from the country. So that's like a big portion of what the series is about.
Yeah.
The historical side anyway.
Well, I love it. I think it's such a good topic, and especially with what you're doing, and I want to talk about the Nature Witch and your journey to get to where you are now, and all of that is interesting that the Ireland ties in because it's so magical. There's so much magic there, and interesting enough. So I've been to I think it's Newgrange, that is a huge burial mound. And on my birthday, which was a couple days ago, December 21st, on the winter solstice, is the only time the sun actually peers through the opening, and it goes all the way to the back. And I'm going to do that one day on my birthday. I'm going to be there because you can get inside.
Yeah.
But there's a long list of, to wait. But I've been inside it, but not obviously during the solstice. And it's just, there's so many magical things that are still being unearthed that it's really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you're doing with all of this.
Yeah, well, I actually read an article, by the way, the other day that sorry, my head's up. I read an article the other day that it was the during the winter solstice, the sun was only the sun peeked through that window during the, oh my gosh, I want to say the Bronze Age, or it was the age before the Bronze Age, but because the planets and everything rotates so much that it no longer does that on the solstice. I believe I read that. So it's not a permanent thing. It just happened during a certain age that they built it 5,000 years ago, whatever age that was. But the other part of the article that was really fascinating is that their god, the Dagda, you know, one of the original gods of Ireland, is supposedly the star Sirius, which is what shines through on the solstice or during a certain period of the year. And so there was this amazing correlation with the celestial objects, the star Sirius. For anybody that is very spiritual, Sirius is one of the homes of star seeds that came to planet Earth and that are on planet Earth right now, trying to help raise the vibration. But just to see the relation to that planet, to their god, was just such a fascinating correlation, because you're like, wow, that this is something that they believed so long ago, that these planets were their gods, that this magic came from the cosmos. And right now, speaking of magic, because I know we're going to talk about it, not just nature, the earth, but the cosmos as well. And so Ireland is just so rich and full of these stories about the land and the magic of the land and the magic of the cosmos. And they've really, really been in tune with that for forever, you know, since recorded history.
Well, I like that you said, talking about magic and vibration, et cetera, et cetera. Quick side note is one of the other people I interviewed earlier on was Wendy Lee. I don't know if you know Wendy.
No.
She's done voices in everything from Cowboy Bebop, you know, she's done like 1,000 voices. And you two will get along fantastically. I had her on, and I'm going to have her on again, because we were talking all about earthing and vibration frequency. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I love to talk about is, so I'm a skeptic, I guess, maybe not in the classic skeptic. I'm critical. I used to always say I'm like Fox Mulder. I want to believe, but I need some proof. Mm-hmm. And science with quantum physics and neuroscience, et cetera, we're getting proof now that vibration, frequency, all of stuff is real. It is measurable. It does matter. And so now it's like the woo-woo is not so woo-woo anymore. It's like, you know, wow, cool. It's actually normal. And we're seeing that. So I like that you said that, because a lot of people don't understand what you say. Oh, the vibration. You're like, what?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, you think about something like magic. Magic is the ability to create an intention, use your own personal power to access the land. You are a vessel, right? You're an energetic vessel, and you have the power to put an intention out there and create alignment with the things you want. That is essentially magic. But when you start using the words spells and magic and witches, people have been conditioned for thousands of years to think that's evil because someone told them it was. Where we're saying woo-woo, when in reality, for thousands of years, human beings have been connected to the land and the cosmos, and they knew these things were real. They intuitively knew it. Their medicines, their plant medicines told them that was real. And again, what we're dealing with right now is we're coming out of what I like to call the spiritual dark age, where we're realizing we have known these things all along, but we were conditioned to think that they were not real. Right. It's not that people ever didn't believe. That's why these stories are so popular, because people know that magic is real. I'm not saying that there's going to be a wizard shooting fire out of his skin, but earth magic, connecting to the earth, connecting to the cosmos, these things are real. Yeah, I think people really deep down inside intuitively know that.
Absolutely. And I think that if you ever have a doubt, it's like, has anybody ever walked in a room and the hair on the back of your neck goes up? Because you're like, something ain't right there. Everyone can say something's not right with this. Well, how the hell do you know that? Frequency, vibration, etc. That's how we know things, and it's now people register. You can see it. I want to say it's the Heart Math Institute that did it, where they took a a cell from a heart, and they took it like out and kept it alive. I don't know how they do this stuff, but they were able to register, and they gave a little shock to the heart, and this cell that was outside of the heart felt that. And it registered as well. And they took it like miles and miles and miles away, and it still did the same thing. I'm like, well, that's amazing. How is that not magic?
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing, is who takes the time these days to go read a book on quantum physics? My first book that I read about witchcraft, by the way, The Power of the Witch by Laurie Cabot, amazing. And she is like a pure blood witch, but she goes through, first of all, the whole history of, like I had said, this is what people believed in because it was real. I mean, this is how they connected to the earth. This is how they lived. And then what happened with Christianity and how that really changed everything. But then she also goes into explaining physics and how it works. And it's like this, who goes out and reads that, right? People, again, are so conditioned. They believe what someone told them or what they're reading in whatever book. But if people actually sat down and started looking into the material that is available, like they say they believe in science, and I'm like, yes, but have you read a book on quantum physics? No. Then what does believing in science mean? go do the research, but that's the argument that I have with people. They're like, I believe in science. I'm like, no, you are uninformed. You say you believe in science, but how much science do you actually study? Not much. If a quantum physics scientist came to me and said, hey, XYZ, I'd be like, okay, you've got a point. But people try to hide behind the words. They try to hide behind science when in reality, they're actually not informed by that either, which I think is interesting. Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's amazing to me. And somebody did a meme. It's like, okay, so they want to, I'm not saying anti-vax or vax or any of that stuff, but somebody wants to put something in your body, medicine or anything at all. And you're like, yes, give me that. But you say, hey, you know what? Here's some herbs, some remedies, all natural, 100% natural. And you're like, oh, I've got to go study that shit.
Yeah. Or like, oh, that's woo-woo. And at the same time, this woo-woo has been around for thousands of years and has very effectively healed people, but no one believes it because someone told them not to. So we're really living in that world where I believe in magic, but I also study it. I practice it. I don't just say it. I live this lifestyle with the vibration. And, I've, like you had mentioned at the very beginning, I've gone through such a tremendous amount of healing and done so much self-work that I believe it because I lived it. I lived all of the things that I talk about, every single thing. I never just believe something because someone tells me. And I think more of us just need to do that. We need to have these experiences and do a little bit of a deeper dive into something that we're so against before we decide to brush it off.
Well, and like I said, skeptical, like, Fox Mulder, I want to believe, but that also kind of pushes it. It's like saying I want to means I don't. Yeah. So it's like I can believe, I know I can believe. And this is something I do a lot of work with the power of subconscious mind now. And it was just like, yeah, I want to be critical of it. And I think there's not enough critical thinking anymore because, like you said, people just go, oh, well, that's right, because everybody seems to think so.
Exactly.
Well, guess what? Everybody's not successful. Why is that?
Yeah.
In whatever. Why is there 50% divorce rates? Why is there, all these things? And people are saying, they're using the same logic that gives us the bad numbers. And I find that interesting, but they won't look at something new because, like you say, it's taboo.
Well, and that's my point too, is they hide behind quote unquote logic, but logic is also backed by information, by knowledge, by wisdom, by looking into it, by studying certain things. So people say they're logical when in reality, they can be quite ignorant. They haven't looked into anything. They just say, well, this is logic. It's like, but someone told you that. That's why you're saying it. You're not Spock. You didn't go and look into these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sometimes what gets me is that people come and they're like, oh, astrology, that's some fake, SHIT. I don't know. Can we swear on the show? Okay, it's some fake shit. I was like, yes, but how much do you know about it? And they're like, oh, nothing. I'm like, okay, well then that's an opinion. That's a very uninformed opinion.
Very uninformed opinion. Yeah, that's what I've been saying, that, why I had a podcast on, who are they and why the hell are you listening to them? Because they don't know. And I have people, we all have people in our life that say, well, you know what they say? I'm like, no, I don't, because I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
It's random. It's a straw man. It's just, it's a way to sound smart, I guess.
Yeah.
So tell me, this is all about the journey. I have a membership group called the Reluctant Heroes Journey, and you've done that.
Oh,
I did
several times.
Most people, as you know, being a writer, that's such a big paradigm. Lord of the Rings, freaking Die Hard. I mean, somebody who has to step up and do all these amazing things, and they're just a guy or a girl. They're just like, okay. And so you're stepping into your power, and I'm really interested in, if you could share with us a little bit of your journey and how, when you say, you went into the self-development, most people don't do that.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear more about that journey, if you can share.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to say first, right off the bat, I've always been into fantasy and magic and fairies since I was little. Thanks to my mom. She really got me into a lot of books and television. I mean, The Dark Crystal is still my favorite movie to date. And I think subliminally, some of these movies, I mean, it's about the Great Conjunction. It's about the combination of light and dark and shadow. And I probably didn't even know that when I was watching it growing up, but I was so fascinated by Jim Henson. So growing up, I didn't have a very religious family, though my grandmother was religious. So I didn't really have all of these forces against me. I lived in a tiny town in the middle of nowhere. I was such a nature freak. Like, I was outside constantly. I mean, back in the day when you could just walk out of your house and your parents don't care, and then you come back home at night for dinner. You're like, I know what time dinner is. I'll be home. And like, nobody knows where you are, and you're wandering in the woods. That was me. So, but also I grew up, a child of the 80s. I was born in 1977. So a lot of my childhood was in the 80s and the 90s. And during this period, as a woman, to be considered strong, to quote unquote survive in the world, I wanted to have a career. Like, I didn't want to, get married right away and have kids. I wanted to have a career. I had these ambitions. I wanted to be an actor at that point. I wanted to be, I think, on Broadway at one point. And in order to be that, you had to be like a man. I was just having this conversation with another woman earlier, that being a strong woman had nothing to do with being feminine. You, in fact, had to shut that down and step into what we consider now toxic masculinity, the competition with other women and other men to survive. So growing up and well into my 20s, when I started working in corporate America, I have a background in design. So I was working in corporate America, had these crazy, disgusting bosses, but I was just trying I guess I was trying to shine. I was trying to expand, but I was so stuck in this world that was controlled by the patriarch. And I know we hear that word a lot. And what it really means to me is that it's that concept where you aren't, having feelings is weak. Being sensitive is weak. Being an empath is weak. Being creative, all of these things were looked at back then as being weakness. So unless you were making tons of money and you were into business and you were into technology, like, that's where your power came from. Being a boss, being demanding, that sort of mentality. So that's how I grew up. I grew up being a woman, an Aries, and a very powerful woman in a man's world. And I completely lost all of my femininity. I mean, it was just, I hid everything. And so, actually, I was in that place until about 2000, I would say 2012, when I started doing the Geekies. Even though at that point I went from corporate America to creating my own content. I created the Skyrim parodies. I was still in the video game world, the world of men. I was doing the Geekie Awards. I was working with production companies. Everyone was a man. Spike actually did the voiceover for the Geekie Awards, which is amazing. Thank you. But I was still living in that world of toxic masculinity, and not just from men, from women. So when I did the Geekie Awards show, it got so big. It got huge the first year. And I ended up getting a lot of bullies out of that. I had the woman that ran LA LA Comic-Con come after me. I had celebrities come after me, people that were just really toxic, that didn't want me in their playground. I had nerdists come after me. And these people sort of surrounded me from all sides and tried to shut it down. They tried to shut the Geekie Awards down. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like I worked so hard for this. I did all of this, you know, and I probably wasn't in the best place in my life at that point. And I had all of these people around me, these toxic people trying to bring me down. And at the same time, I was going through a lot of issues with my personal relationship, which I won't get into, but I had a partner for a really long time. I was going through a lot of stuff at home. And I really came to this point where I broke. I mean, everything together just totally destroyed me. I got really sick. I got adrenal fatigue. I was doing the second year of the Geekie Awards so ill. I don't think anybody knew because I was just like, power through, power through. And meanwhile, I had an acupuncturist who is a shaman that's like, what are you doing to yourself? You're killing yourself. Like, I can't watch you do this, because my body was a mess. It just was falling apart. And so probably around 2013, after the first show, I guess I would say right after the first show in early 2014, I collapsed. I mean, I couldn't get out of bed. My hormones were all off. I mean, I think that people say that when they first start their spiritual awakening, like everything goes to hell. Like my relationship wasn't great. My career wasn't great. Everything seemed great on the outside, but on the inside, it was just blowing up. And my acupuncturist said, you know, you're into fairies, you're into magic. I know you like this. I think you should start getting back into that. So I got a book from, spacing on his name, Tom somebody, about fairies. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is the world I remember. I just felt so good reading it. And then I got introduced to Laurie Cabot's book, The Power of the Witch. And I remember she has a section in there that says, if you are called to read this book, you are a witch. And I remember thinking, oh my God. And I just read it and I connected with it so much. I was like, nature, this connection to nature, this power, there's something more. I feel like I've been so oppressed and living in this man's world. And that's when I started practicing witchcraft, and which was really a lot of meditation, a lot of spell work, which is putting your intentions out there. Again, we're using different words and
affirmations.
Yeah, absolutely. Affirmations, intentions, doing meditations, you know, working with crystals, all of that. And I just felt like I started healing. And then I remember I think it was April 14th, 2014, because it was 2 days before my birthday, also when the Titanic sank, and there was a blood moon eclipse. And I was like, I'm doing this big spell, and I'm going to do this divination spell, and I'm going to ask the universe, like, what am I meant to do? My life needs to change. I need something better. Tell me. And 2 days later, like on my birthday, literally, I did the spell. I felt amazing. And I ended up having my Kundalini Awakening. That activated my Kundalini Awakening, and my body just like blew up. So I was already sick, and all of a sudden my body was just like, nope. And so I was forced to stop and start meditating hardcore and start activating my power and start clearing all of the trauma. It started back then. And that sort of initially sparked my journey. And then I think the heavy work was really from about 2014 to 16. And by that time, I booked a trip to Ireland. I got the download for the story. I was feeling really good about myself, but really miserable in my job and my relationship and all of those things. And I knew that my life had to change. And so I started working on the story, and through creating Era Song, because it is a story about a girl that has a spiritual awakening to her magic. It is my story that I'm writing in another time. Through that process of writing, I began to heal myself. And since then, I've worked with tons of healers from all over the world, from Costa Rica to you name it. And I've just done the work. Like, you hear people say, I did the work. And I don't really think I need to get into that, but it was just many, many years of healing my womb, healing my trauma, healing all of these different things, getting to the point where I was forgiving people, you know, family members, people in the industry. And what ended up happening was in 2019, I was like, I'm done. I'm done with California. I'm done with working in the entertainment industry. And I quit my job. I left LA. I had already had to sell my house, and I moved to the Oregon coast, where I am right now. My mom is nearby, my neighbor, and I'm writing these books. So, and really, you asked me about being a nature witch. That is where it all spawned from. Was I believe that when we start our spiritual awakening journey, we're always drawn to something. Some people might be drawn to Jesus. Some people are drawn to witchcraft. Some people are drawn to Kundalini yoga or meditation or mind work or a combination of everything. I honestly study everything. And that is what, I mean, that's what we're doing now. Those were our teachers and our guides that were going to guide us through this journey. But that's where it started, was with Magick. And so Magick literally saved my life.
That's amazing. I mean, that's all of that right there. And I think what the big takeaway that I got from all of that was basically finding your light. Mm-hmm. Yours was fairies. And like you said at the end, you wrapped it up with some people find Jesus, some people find community, whatever it is. And I think something that's interesting is so many people, I'm going to make a parallel here. Most people, we are taught now to everything is very, very shallow. So there's no depth to anything. Yeah. It's like, oh, I've got so many tabs open up on my computer. I'm doing this thing, but I got a little here, a little there, blah, 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 blah. And nobody is going in deep on anything, whether it be marketing, whether it be their personal selves, et cetera. Yeah. And being able to find that one thing that speaks to you will get you going deeper into it because you love it. It sparks your heart.
Absolutely. And that to me, I love the fairies. I have a friend who is much more connected to them, but to me, it's my connection to nature. That's why I'm here in Oregon. It's my connection to the land, to animals, to trees, to the ocean, to the cosmos. You know, I consider the cosmos nature as well, because we're not a bubble, we're a whole universe. And so just finding that connection back to myself through that. And that includes rediscovering my body, rediscovering my divine feminine energy, which of course led to having healthier masculine energy and moving away from that dominant, you know, competitive, toxic world. And so, yeah, and that's kind of what I meant is everybody finds their shtick, and you do fall in love with it. And again, I have a friend who loves Jesus. I love Jesus too, but not as much as she does. And I have seen her life transform because of that. But at the end of the day, it is about love. Whatever it is that you attach yourself to, Magick is about loving yourself. Jesus is about loving yourself. It all comes down to which avenue leads you back to self-love, right? At the end of the day, that's really what we're doing, is finding that self-love so that we can then turn around, like you said, we find our light and we can shine that for other people and help them find their light as well.
Well said. It's interesting because in my search as well, and research and search, is if you look at it like Jesus or Allah or any of the religions, it all comes down to the golden rule, you know, treat people like you want to be treated. And if you just do that across the board, universally, pretty solid.
Absolutely.
You know? And it's interesting that, you know, because like people say witchcraft, et cetera, and it's just, I don't know, you know, obviously the history far better than me, but it's like it's a organized religion of ignorance that pushed that away. Am I correct in that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, when you think about witchcraft, I mean, there is a Wiccan religion. I'm not Wiccan, but there is a Wiccan religion. They did make sort of a religion about it, but it is still very nature-based. But witchcraft back in the day, it was connecting to the land and the cosmos. The druids like connected to the trees. They had plant medicine. They knew how to read the stars. That's essentially what it was. But, you know, the Christians came along and were like, that's giving people too much power. We need to control this. And so they just, you know, back during that time, if it wasn't your religion and you weren't the dominant force, it meant nothing. So they just demolished that all. And they started burning women. They started just trying to destroy that because it wasn't Christianity. I mean, there wasn't room back in the day for multiple religions. I mean, you can see today how people treat people from Islam. It's like, they're evil, like everyone's evil, which is ridiculous because it's actually an incredibly peaceful religion. incredibly peaceful based on the evolution of the soul. You know, it's so much older than Christianity. So it's just ignorance.
It's like and even I've listened to some shaman as well, and they're saying this, like, yes, there is dark magic. It's like anything else. There's dark religion. Why?
Well, there's dark humans.
It's a choice. Yeah.
It's a choice.
You want to use it for bad, whatever it is. It's like, I mean, a hammer hits a nail, builds a house, smacks somebody on the head. It's a hammer, you know.
But I think people think that magic is dark, but magic can only work because of you, a human. Magic doesn't work on its own. It's your intention that puts out something that will benefit or harm someone. But like I said, it's the human. They can believe in anything. It's not the belief. It's not the material. It's not the connection. It's what they do with it.
Yeah. It's that feeling. I mean, if you look at love, if two people get together and they spark and it's love, people call it magic.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is.
Yeah.
It also takes some work.
Yeah. It's a little bit.
There are tips, tricks, techniques, tools you might want to, look into to keep those things going. Oh, by the way, now Oregon, gorgeous. I drove the PCH all the way up to Washington. I loved Oregon. Is that where you're from originally, or?
No, I'm from New York, baby. I'm from the East Coast. I've lived in New York, Boston, Italy, Seattle, Los Angeles, now Oregon. And I live on the Samuel L. Boardman corridor. So I think it's the most stunning, the most talked about section of the 101. It's where everything looks like the Goonies, basically. It's just absolutely beautiful. Where the redwoods are right there. The trees are there. The ocean is literally, I could see it from my window right now. It's, it's dark out. But we've got all those sea stacks, the big giant rocks rising up. So it is stunning here. And it is the closest thing to Ireland that I could get without being in Ireland, but still being in America. And my mom lives here.
That makes sense. Yeah. Now I'm an avid traveler. And where did you go in Italy? Because that's where we honeymooned.
Oh, okay. So I studied abroad in Florence, and I've been around all over Italy. I didn't get further than Naples, so I'm sad I didn't make it to Sicily. But I was there. I studied abroad there, and then I stayed there a lot longer. So I lived in Florence. Obviously, went to Venice, Milan. We spent tons of time in Rome because I was an art major studying architecture. So we were in Rome all the time. In Naples, the countryside, all of Tuscany, basically. So it's just, Tuscany was basically where I'm at. But Florence, oh my gosh, it was one of the best times of my entire life. And at that point, I was like semi-fluent Italian. I'd have to get back to it now and relearn. But
and I would say travel is magic.
Oh my God.
I really believe that, because I think that the best education in the world is travel. And a closed mind cannot suffer through travel if you do it enough. Because I mean, your mind has to open. You see the world and you go, oh, people keep telling me, they keep telling me one thing, but this is the reality.
Oh yeah. You don't get half of what's going on. I mean, even if last year for Christmas, my father took us to South America. So we went to Rio and went to Argentina, and Rio, we were like, Rio, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And it was, but then you start talking to the people and realize how poor they are and how horrible their economics are and how much they have to rely on tourism. I'm sure they're doing horrible right now. And you really get the inside scoop. But also what a lot of people don't know is not only when you travel, are you experiencing other people and other cultures, your energy downloads the energy of the land. So you only have to go somewhere once to actually have access to the land. So you go to Ireland, you bring that magic back with you, which is why I try to go to as many places as possible, especially if it's a sacred place like that, where people are so in tune or the land is very magical. You bring that back with you. That energy absorbs into you and it becomes a part of you. So the more you travel, the more you have access to the earth and the land and all of these different places that, you don't have right here in your little bubble spot.
Yeah. And it gets into your heart. It goes with you. I can attest to that. Ireland is. Yay!
I've got
So Ireland is in my heart. I'm part Irish and Scottish and all this other stuff. And we've already decided, yeah, we're going to have a castle in Scotland and a cottage in Ireland. You know, we're good with that. And because it's just so wonderful. But it's the same thing, like you said, South America, we want to go to Argentina. It was going to be, our honeymoon was either going to be Argentina or it was going to be Italy. And we chose Italy. And Florence is pretty much our favorite city on the planet.
Best.
We stayed just north of Cinque Terre. So,
oh my God, Cinque Terre. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
We lived in Monalia, which is just lovely little town, and we just loved it. So we lived for 6 weeks. So we saw Venice, Rome, and all that.
Yeah,
but yeah, we're going back for sure.
The Italians are lucky they had the Roman Empire because a lot of stuff stayed intact. I mean, you know, they yeah. You know what I mean? Like there's unfortunately some places that were completely destroyed by wars, and Italy just has like such a preserved piece of history. I mean, when you go to visit the Pantheon, you go from the Pantheon and you walk around this curve, the circular curve. And as you go up, the buildings get newer and newer and newer, and they're so different in like one tiny little area. And it all comes down to the heart of the Pantheon. It's incredible how many eras of time are built into cities. And that's in Rome. But in any of those cities, it's so amazing.
Well, we were in Rome in Trastevere, Trastevere, I don't know. You have to say it with your hand. Trastevere. And it was, we went to, I'm a huge foodie, I'm sure you know. And we went to this one spot that they were built up. They said they were built over the original synagogue in Rome, which was 8 stories down. So Rome was built up like that. Mm-hmm. People don't know that. And they had a square foot that was drilled all the way down. And you could just see, it's like, yeah, you go all the way down, and every floor was 800 years, he said.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was so interesting. And he said, yeah, go see the wine cellar, go down the steps, and you're going down 800 years. And I went down to the wine cellar. I was like, he's not shitting me. This is amazing. You know,
isn't it incredible?
That kind of magic, it really rubs off on you. Yeah. I really believe that. Yeah. And of course, if you're going from a good standpoint, a good mental, like, oh, this is exciting, you bring your energy to that place as well. And it mingles nicely. And this is why we've gotten the ugly American tourists. They're like, well, where's the stairs? There's stairs. Where's the elevator? I want an elevator in the Duomo.
Yeah, there's unfortunately so much entitlement. I mean, even when we were in Rio, people there are very poor. And even if you're not a wealthy American, you have so much more money. And $20 is so much to them. Yeah. And I would hear people on these tours be like, give them $5. That's good enough. I mean, it was just, there's such an entitlement to the American culture. Yeah. Where first of all, we don't realize how oppressed we are. We think we live in a free society. We really don't. So many countries. Yeah. So so many other countries have it much better off. But there's just so much entitlement when people travel and they don't understand that these other cultures, and they don't want to. And so that is what gives this ugly American. But I will say that the Irish love Americans because we bring so much tourism to their country. And during the famine, it was America that actually brought food ships to Ireland when England was exporting food. So they have a very long-standing love for America, regardless of what happened to them when they came here during that time. The Irish love Americans, which is, great for us because they're so friendly when you're there. And it's like, how can you not love the Irish people? That's one place you go where you're like, nobody's mean. Everybody's nice. I mean, granted, an Irish person would be like, what are you talking about? Of course we're mean. But you're like, no, not really. Like, you're some of the friendliest people you've ever met. Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. I've loved it every time. And same in Australia, they love us. They love Americans. And of course, you were saying you grew up in the 80s, which was that was an Aussie love fest.
Oh, yeah. Well, they love it. They got all of our TV shows, like everything that comes to Australia is like from America. So they're like, we love this. We're waiting for this movie. We're waiting for this. So people look at America and they see it as this like incredible country full of opportunity. And it is, but it is also a capitalist society where it's very cutthroat. And, you do have to live in that toxic masculinity sometimes to survive, which is a little unfortunate, but I think things are changing.
Yeah. Like you said, it's it's that feeling. There's a toxic masculinity, and I think that there's an awakening, like you're saying,
Yeah.
it is happening. And it's amazing because in the dating and relationship world, I wrote the book and I've trained and spoken for years on that. And I see guys, I'm just like, what are you doing? The things that guys are saying, I'm like, that's not even in the 40s. I mean, what in the world are you, I don't get it. I don't understand where they're coming from, but I have to respect that it came from an energy before them, generational.
Absolutely.
Probably.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think I posted this the other day. People always say, oh, well, that was, they grew up a certain way. And then somebody said, yeah, but Sir Patrick Stewart is 80 years old and he's totally anti-misogynist and all for LGBTQ. So you have no excuse. But it is, and I don't mean to sound sexist here, but I believe it's the women. I believe it's the feminine that is actually bringing the shift to this country because it is so toxic masculine. And that, by the way, is not, when I say masculine, feminine, we all have both energies. We know that. I'm sure you've talked about that before on your show. Yeah. So this isn't male, female. This isn't gender related at all. But I do believe that the feminine is rising, and that includes in men. Like, it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be sensitive. I believe that there are a lot of men that are emotional and sensitive that have also gotten crapped on over the years. And I think that is shifting because of the feminine energy that the earth now has that is kind of emanating out into the entire world. People have no choice. Then we got a pandemic and you have no choice but to sit with your own shit, right? Yeah. You're at home, yeah. And then you have to do the work.
Yeah. And that's why I started the podcast during all of this. Yeah. It's just, I'm like, and this is what it's about. I love the feminine and masculine. People don't get that. They don't go deeper. This is why the personal growth and self-help is so new to so many people. When I say like feminine, I have a very feminine energy that I know how to work with. And that's something my wife loves about me. And she's like, you get it. You're not that we'll work it out.
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's talk about it. Let's listen, and
you have a great balance. Yeah.
Yeah. It's learning that because all guys have it. All guys have feminine and masculine. Yeah. And that, like you said, is like the old religious teachings or the old, hey, you're a man, do this kind of teachings. It's like stripping that away. So then they go, okay, how am I feeling without being, I don't have feelings. Oh man, should have.
Yeah.
It's like really learning and leaning into it and then feeling it and moving on and utilizing it. I think that's powerful. And that's what I'm seeing. And I think that's kind of what you're hitting on. People are figuring it out.
And also, it's not even just about feelings. It's the feminine is your intuition. It's being still. It's getting out of that ambition-driven competition world and being still with yourself and saying, yeah, but what makes me happy? And listening to your body. It's all of those things that require stillness and intuitive and being in the flow. Right now, there is so much going on that people that are control freaks are dying inside because they don't know what's going on with the pandemic, with work, with this. And this has been a really big year to surrender to the flow. Like, look, the universe has got shit going on. We just have to wait to see what happens while also trying to do work and do what we love and accomplish. But it's not about going out there and like killing ourselves anymore. And that really is the divine feminine flow. And the beautiful thing about that is these masculines, it's like, okay, but if you incorporate this healthy, beautiful, feminine flow, which again, everyone has, like you said, it's about feeling your emotions, observing them, like being one with them, allowing yourself to flow, to be at ease, to be creative. If you can bring that energy in, you actually balance your masculine to be more assertive, to be better at action that's coming from your intuition as opposed to your ego. So if you can balance that feminine, you actually become a better masculine, a better leader, a better boss. So it's not like we're telling men like you need to be a woman or anything. Again, it's not gender specific, but as men and women, masculine and feminine, it's about the balance. But we're so out of balance right now because that feminine has been so repressed. The magic has been repressed by religion, by the patriarch, by all of these different things. Once we get back into that flow, we're going to see people taking inspired action, guided action, more spiritual action, action that benefits more people. And I just believe that that in itself is going to create a better world for everyone.
I
really
agree.
Good start. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It's about balance.
Gonna have to wrap this up here in just a minute, but I'd love it if you have, is there any other tools? I see the Power of the Witch by Lori Cabot. That sounds very interesting. I'll be picking that up, as I know Kim and I are both interested in that,
Yeah.
in that aspect. And also I'm curious, are there any personal development, self-help growth tools that you use that you might recommend to some of our listeners?
All right. Well, I'm a big fan. First of all, I'm a huge fan of astrology. So I would say this is less of a self-help growth tool. But what I said earlier to my friend was astrology has helped me so much because not only can I look at my natal chart and see exactly why everything happened in my life, like I can see what the planets were doing when I was born. I can see everything. I can see all of my energy, why I'm a certain way, why certain things trigger me. It does help with understanding who you are. But when you have your natal chart and you start studying astrology and keeping current with what the planets are doing, it actually helps you realize what you're going through. So for example, person A might be like, oh my God, I'm going through this huge fight with my boyfriend right now. Things aren't working out. I'm going to break up with him. And I'm over here going, Venus is in retrograde. This is all about self-love. If you knew that, if you actually paid attention and knew that that was the energy that the entire world is feeling right now, then you would better understand what you are going through because of the cosmos. So I totally recommend learning astrology and following astrological planetary alignments because the planets do put forth certain energy that does affect us on a very large scale. And it helps you understand what you're going through. And I can immediately tune in and go, oh, there's an eclipse. Okay, well, I'm definitely going to get some triggers during this time. So I know to set aside time to work on things. And I'm not going to be so freaked out when I get triggered and some big change happens, right? It helps you kind of prepare. Right. The other thing that I really love that I would recommend to anyone is start using or playing around with tarot decks. Tarot decks or oracle cards. The magic comes from within you. Of course, tarot is a system, but that helps people be still and access their intuition a lot better sometimes than meditation. Meditation is amazing, but a lot of people say the same thing. I can't sit still for that long. But if you tune in to tarot and you start pulling from your intuition and you start channeling that energy, it's actually a similar effect to meditation where you're taking yourself out of your mind, out of your ego and tuning in. And it's just such a wonderful tool to start practicing listening to yourself because that's where it comes from. So instead of going out and hiring psychics or people to tell you what's going to happen, start playing around with tarot decks, start researching that. But those are primarily the two things that I do. And of course, I meditate. I would say lastly is just giving yourself time, understanding you're a human being that has emotions and you are going to feel your stuff. Right now, you're going to feel your parents' stuff. You're going to feel the collective stuff. You're going to feel past lives, whether you believe in them or not. You're going to feel your ancestral trauma. All of these things are coming up right now, and it's a really intense time for purging and healing. Give yourself the space. If your body is tired, rest. Drink lots of water. Take time off. Going out into nature is the number one tool to help yourself heal and regenerate, aside from resting and of course, doing things like exercise. So yes, so definitely tune into nature and rest and listen to your body. Play with tarot for some guidance on accessing your intuition, and then start following astrology if you want to know what's really going on, not Fox News.
There you go. Well, that is amazing. I'm so glad we finally got to get together with this. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be interested. So is there anywhere that they can get to you? I'll put this in the show notes and we'll get all that for now, but go ahead and tell us where they can find you.
Absolutely. Well, magickgirl.com, Magick Girl with a K, Magick, girl.com. I'm still working on my website, but that's going to point you to a link tree where you can find my Instagram. My handle is right there, Kristen Nedopak, Magick Girl. So you can find me on Instagram where I post a lot. I tend to only post to friends on Facebook, but I do have a Magick Girl page on Facebook, and I have a group called the Magick Grove, which is where I post videos and content more related to magic. So yeah, you guys can find me there, but magickgirl.com will probably take you to all those places.
Fantastic. I love it. I've been watching your journey kind of from afar because we've been friends for a while, and
I know.
I'm always sending you good love, and I was like, "Oh, come on!"
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, it's such a journey, isn't it?
It is an interesting journey we've all had, let me tell you. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll let you know when this comes out, and we'll just keep in touch. And if anything I can ever do for you, just reach out, let me know.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone, and bye, Spike. I appreciate you so much, and enjoy the land down under.
It's so great in Australia. So this has been the Mind Scrambler podcast, everybody. Kristen Nedopak, amazing. So get in touch with her, and we'll see you next time right here on the Mind Scrambler podcast. See you later.